Hello, everyone. How the hell are we doing? I am Chris, and I am back to review Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. As I just so many great things in the background of this video. I swear to God, with all this stuff piling up behind me right now, I feel like it's kind of advancing me more towards this wall. It's just slowly but surely, there's like new things being added to the room. But yeah, I mean, Marvel have slapped out another film. Another film in the MCU. I mean, Christ Almighty, they aren't slowing down anytime soon, are they? What with this and all of the Disney Plus TV shows, of course. And we're here to talk about it. So I'm going to give people like a few extra minutes maybe to jump in the chat if you are tuning in. Maybe I'm just going to be talking to myself, and that's absolutely fine because I definitely have a lot of things to say on this film, and I want to hear from you guys as well. If you've seen Doctor Strange, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the first Doctor Strange. Let me know what you think of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I'll probably periodically be calling it by its full title and Doctor Strange 2, just for the sake of brevity. And in terms of my socials, subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, discussions, and live streams. In terms of movie reviews at the moment, I believe this is my second one on this channel. But you know, as we get into summer movie season, you know, tickets have already gone on sale as well for Top Gun Maverick, which is a film that I'm really looking forward to. Whenever there's big films out, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be talking about them, and you know, with something as big as the MCU, it's definitely worth talking about. And of course, my Twitter as well. You can find me on there for more information when I do go live for these live streams. And for just other little bits of movie and TV stuff in between, whatever I feel like talking about, check me out on my Twitter. That's going across the bottom of the screen right now. That's at Hobbit Fan Editor. And yeah, give me a follow on there. Why not? Doctor Strange. Well, I guess, you know, I may as well start off saying what I actually think about the Doctor Strange character and, you know, the first film. The first film was solid. It was a solid origin story. It was kind of part of Marvel's cookie cutter formula, I would say, in terms of their films around about that time. But Doctor Strange as a character is just fascinating to me. And even after watching this one, Doctor Strange probably, in the current lineup of the heroes, Doctor Strange probably is my favorite character. He's got the most interesting powers visually on film. And, you know, it's just incredible to see how it always seems like they can push the envelope in terms of visuals and what we can see. And, you know, the CGI is fantastic for the most part with a lot of that stuff. I'm really into the mind-bending psychedelic weirdness that is Doctor Strange. And also Benedict Cumberbatch, just the look of the character, it's right off the comic book page, which I always appreciate when, you know, they try and make the character as accurate as possible in these Marvel films, because they're adapting comic books, you know, and that's fundamentally what it is. Just embrace the weirdness. So I enjoyed the first Doctor Strange film for what it is, and then of course the character's gone on to feature in multiple crossover films with all of the Avengers films, and most recently Spider-Man No Way Home, which Doctor Strange played a crucial part in. And I remember when this was announced, however many years ago it was now, it's probably when Disney do their, you know, these are all the films that we've got coming out for like the next 5 or so years. And they have the fonts down, don't they? And it was in big block red letters, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And it almost looked like a Stephen King novel, you know, like a horror novel font on the front. And they were pretty open from the beginning that this was going to be the MCU's first horror film. And I was completely on board from that, you know, in a series that has become very formulaic, with all of the films kind of adhering to a particular template now. Hearing that they were going to go down like a horror film route was bold. It was interesting. It was different. It's something that we haven't really seen specifically with the MCU so far. So I love the idea of that. I don't really know much about the Doctor Strange character in terms of the comic books and everything like that, but I was doing a bit of reading, and the original director who they had on board for this thing was Scott Derrickson, who directed the first Doctor Strange film. He's been very vocal with how passionate he is about and how much he loves the character of Doctor Strange. And even when they made the first one, you know, there were so many crazy, weird, tripped out things they wanted to do in that first film, but they thought it was probably too much for an origin story. So all of these wacky ideas they had, they were going to keep them, you know, close to the chest. And then when they got their chance to direct the sequel and maybe even the third one, boom, we're going to get, you know, no holds barred Doctor Strange, essentially, which sounded incredible. And it was Derrickson himself, actually, that said that he wanted to make it like a horror film. he himself, coming from horror film, as his career as a director was mostly in the horror genre, directing things like The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Sinister, Deliverers and things like that. He's steeped in the horror genre fundamentally. And I thought that was a really cool angle to bring to Doctor Strange. He talked about, he expressed interest in having a villain in there from the comics called Nightmare, which isn't one that I'm very familiar with. I did a bit of reading. I think he's from some kind of dream dimension or whatnot. And, he had all these bold and, he had a vision for what he wanted to do. And Marvel doesn't like a director with vision half of the time. No pun intended, because I realize there's a character in the MCU called Vision. I'm talking about Vision when it comes to filmmaking. Now, sometimes they let them make the film they want to make. For example, James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy. You watch that and you say, that is very much a James Gunn film, but in the grand scheme of things, it always seems like Marvel is there, directing everything, saying, oh no, don't make it like that, make it like this. This is what works. This is what's safe. This is what we've done with all these other films before. Make it like that. And for whatever reason, Scott Derrickson parts with Marvel over creative differences over Doctor Strange 2. Since then, I believe Kevin Feige has gone on record saying that it wasn't because although we didn't agree with his vision for the film, it being a horror film wasn't one of the things that we were opposed against. We actually really liked that idea. Which, seeing how this film has turned out now, and we're going to be getting into the review in the film in just a second, that is the case. There are horror elements, but I have the feeling that Derrickson would have made it focused and just all a horror film, which I actually think would have been better. In the case of what we've got now, Sam Raimi coming on board, of course. He himself, is no stranger to the superhero genre, what with the incredible Spider-Man Raimi trilogy. And, before that, beginning his career with horror and horror elements and, some quite campy, tongue-in-cheek horror elements, what with the Evil Dead trilogy and things like Drag Me to Hell and Darkman and everything like that. There are still very much horror elements in this film. But I have a feeling, there are so many other elements into this film, which is, part of my criticism when we get into this film in just a second, is that it feels like there's so many different ideas and a lot of studio notes. And a lot of, can we just add this character in because this is going to tie into this in like so many films' time? It doesn't feel as focused. So I guess that's kind of my sort of like the history of the production in many ways. Sam Raimi is a fine director. He's a director with a very distinct visual style and tone to his films, I will say. And that's definitely the case with this film as well. Like if you watch it, you can quite easily tell that it's a Sam Raimi film. I'm going to take a sip of this before we get into this review. One thing that just caught me off guard there a little bit. Sorry, guys. When the name was released as well, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, itself, the title is quite pulpy. It's quite a little bit campy, isn't it? It's like Star Wars, Attack of the Clones. It's quite like 50s, kind of B-movie horror kind of thing, or B-movie type thing. When you had like Attack of the Martians or Attack of the Killer Ants or whatever it is. And, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness sounds very much like that, doesn't it? Now, when that was announced, I thought, right, this is going to be the film. This is going to be the film that just introduces us to the multiverse, the concept of the multiverse, and just goes absolutely balls to the wall crazy with it. And it really isn't that kind of film. In fact, in terms of explaining or developing the multiverse, I don't feel like it does a good job of that, really. We've had things before, elements of it with WandaVision, which I will say is absolutely required viewing for this film. I know someone they'll be in the cinema right now, is seeing the film tonight and hasn't seen WandaVision. So I don't know how they're going to get on with this film, because there is a void of information between the last time that we saw Wanda and the time that we see her now, if you haven't seen WandaVision. But I guess you come to expect that from the MCU now. But it is kind of irritating now how, well, I mean, it's all part of Disney, isn't it? You know, it's the content. It's like, oh, you've subscribed to our Disney Plus because we have all these shows that are going to tie in with the films also. And if you want to stay up to date, you've got to watch them all. But I think things like Loki, for example, did a much better job of introducing the multiverse. And even Spider-Man No Way Home, I would say, is a better multiverse film than Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I don't feel like this film went far enough with that stuff. I think it could have gone like a lot more mind-bending, but as it is, it kind of tells a very, I say simple story. It's mired in exposition and feels needlessly complicated at some points when you really break it down and realize what a simple plot it actually is. I'm trying to think about how to get into this review. So ultimately, there are things that I like about this film. There are. And actually, you know what? Let's go into the things that I enjoyed most about this film. And I'll warn you when I get to spoilers. I'm not going to intend to spoil it just yet. Things that I liked the most, going back to the direction, was Sam Raimi's visual style. And just, you can, as I mentioned, you can tell that it's a Sam Raimi film, and there are a lot of callbacks into like previous films that he's done, specifically chief among them Evil Dead. There's a lot of Evil Dead in this film, and Drag Me to Hell, I would say, as well. There might be cameos from certain people who you can probably come to expect from being in a Sam Raimi film. If you're a Sam Raimi fan, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And the stuff with them is exactly what you'd come to imagine. It's campy, it's cartoony, it's over the top, and it filled me with so much Evil Dead nostalgia joy. So I loved all that stuff. The use of Dutch angles as well, where there's zoom ins on like crazy angles like this. There's more interesting stuff going on with the direction of this film than I've ever seen in a lot of the other MCU movies. And I'm glad that, you know, maybe Sam Raimi didn't get a, you know, say in the entire plot, because I have a feeling that Marvel was kind of breathing down his neck, which is actually one of the reasons that he was very hesitant to come back to direct a superhero film, was because of how, you know, feeling the fatigue after doing three Spider-Man films. And also probably how Sony was, how the studio system was with him when it came to Spider-Man 3, you know, how they were forcing ingredients into the film, you know, forcing characters and storylines that he didn't want to do, and ultimately having to make a film that appealed to the studio rather than what he actually wanted to do himself. And there's probably elements to that in there as well, but it seems like with this film, he had a lot more freedom with what he wanted to do and could bring a bit of his staple style to it as well. You know, there are certain bits where there might be macabre characters in it, like dead bodies and animated dead bodies and everything. And they're like the Deadites from Evil Dead. And that stuff was really cool to me. So all the stuff where Sam Raimi's style was shining through, and all of the callbacks. There's like an evil book in the film as well, like an evil spell book, like the Mystic Dark Arts or something. I've forgotten what it's called. And it's basically the Necronomicon. You know, so all of that stuff I really got a kick out of, I will say. I'll get onto music later, but obviously Danny Elfman came in to do the music for this one because he's a long-time collaborator with Danny Elfman, scoring Oz the Great and Powerful, the first two Spider-Man films, Darkman, you know, and I think he did Army of Darkness as well, if I remember rightly, the third Evil Dead film. It was going to be Michael Giacchino, but you know, when the director left over creative differences and Sam Raimi came in, Sam Raimi wanted to use his longtime collaborator, composer Danny Elfman, which is absolutely fair enough if a director and a composer has built that kind of relationship with each other. I may as well talk about the music now, actually. From the opening couple of bars of the film, you know that it's a Danny Elfman score. Danny Elfman, you know, I love Danny Elfman. I do. I think he's a fantastic composer, but I will say a lot of his music has become incredibly samey. I feel like he did Edward Scissorhands and he did Batman and Batman Returns, and ever since then, he's kind of been recycling the same score over and over again. And it's a great score to, you know, keep recycling, but it's the usual tropes that you come to imagine from a Danny Elfman score. And one of the things that Elfman mentioned that he wanted to do, and he's no stranger to the MCU as well, because Danny Elfman scored Avengers Age of Ultron, which I actually thought was a very weak score. And one of my problems was the lack of continuity of themes, which is a thing that Marvel's been really bad with, but has got slightly better with, I would say, over the years. Probably because they keep hiring Michael Giacchino to do the scores for them, or Alan Silvestri. I think Danny Elfman used one reprise of the Alan Silvestri main theme of the Avengers theme, and that was it in the entirety of Avengers Age of Ultron, which was a problem to me. And similar to this, the Michael Giacchino theme for Doctor Strange is very distinct. Its use of, it almost sounds like a harpsichord, and it sounds psychedelic and funky, and it matches the Doctor Strange character perfectly. You get one reprise of that theme in this whole film. And the rest of the film, I couldn't tell you a single bit of music. It's just kind of your generic Danny Elfman score that kind of just, it is background noise in many ways. So I was a little bit let down by that we didn't get many distinctive themes in there or continuity between those themes, which was a shame. Other positives. Elizabeth Olsen. Now, I might be straying slightly into spoiler territory right now. I don't know how much of her has been revealed in the trailer, so I guess I'm just going to give a spoiler warning for right now in case you haven't seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Go and watch it first and then come back, and then obviously we can pick it up from there. Elizabeth Olsen returning as Wanda, and more prominently in the film as Scarlet Witch, which was get it? Oh god. I knew she was going to be in the film, obviously, because she was in the trailer, but I didn't know to the degree that she was going to be in this film, in that Scarlet Witch is basically the main antagonist of this whole film. And dare I say, well, of course I'm going to dare to say, it's my channel, I can say whatever the hell I want. She's kind of the main character of the film in many ways, I would say. I mean, Doctor Strange is there along for the ride, and, he's got a mission, he's trying to achieve something, he's trying to keep someone safe, but there were loads of points in this film where I felt like Doctor Strange was kind of playing second fiddle to Scarlet Witch, which in a Doctor Strange film is a problem. I just feel like comparing it to the first film, I know the first film was an origin story, but it feels a lot more focused on Stephen Strange and Doctor Strange as a character and his journey and his progression, which is what it needs to be for a good origin story. And that's kind of the thing where Marvel are faltering now a little bit, is that when we get to the sequels, it feels like the whole weight of the MCU and all of these characters that we've got to introduce and storylines that we've got to set up and spin-offs that we've got to link into kind of compounds on itself. And it makes the core of the story very diluted. It doesn't feel as focused on character or characterization or relationships between characters. It feels just very A to B to C to D, and there's your movie. It feels like a product. It feels like, oh, that was another bit of content that I watched. The film didn't really hit me emotionally, and nothing about it particularly stayed with me. In fact, I saw this film about 12 hours ago, I would say, and I'm already forgetting bits of the film. It hasn't really stuck with me. But one of the positives that I do have, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't like that Wanda / Scarlet Witch is so prominent and feels like the main character. She's the one, to me, who goes through the biggest character arc of the entire film and learns the most and has, the most meat to the story. But because of that, her performance is fantastic. And she's been playing the character since Age of Ultron. It was a character that I never really cared for the longest time in the MCU. And it was honestly really only WandaVision that kind of completely 180'd me to the character. I love that she's finally in the costume and that they've embraced that. And I think that maybe that was I don't think it was a rights thing, was it? Because they had the rights to use Scarlet. I think that, no, they could use Wanda and they could use Pietro, but they couldn't use the name Scarlet Witch and they couldn't use the name Quicksilver. I think that was the agreement that they had. And then obviously when Disney buy 20th Century Fox, who owned X-Men at the time, they can now use those characters. So when Wanda finally got in that costume at the end of WandaVision, I was like, that's the costume I've wanted to see for ages. I like when they embrace the comic book nature of something like that. And she's great. She toes the line between so many emotions in this film. She is, plays emotion very well. She's got a believable goal, a motive of what she wants to do in the film, which links very nicely into the WandaVision TV series. She's powerful, she's incredible, she's intimidating, but she's also very campy and over the top and chews a lot of the scenery, which I always appreciate in, like a good sort of like campy, over the top costumed villain. And that's exactly what she plays. A lot of the horror elements in the film come directly from her character, where she kind of embraces this Scarlet Witch persona. And we see a lot more of her powers and capabilities. Powers that I will say, and I'll get into this later, that do feel very inconsistent. Hey, how you doing, man? We've got SeaWorld Man in the comments. How you doing? Powers of hers do feel very inconsistent, and there are a lot of times where she feels too overpowered. When she's particularly fighting against certain characters. I know she's an incredibly powerful character, I get that, but there are certain characters they introduce in this film that have such a legacy, or will come to have a legacy in future MCU films, and they're kind of dispatched with just like that. There's a scene, for example, where Scarlet Witch is pursuing Doctor Strange through this underground tunnel, which is flooded with water, and they're running through, and Doctor Strange is bringing these blast doors down behind him to try and slow her down, and she's just blasting through them like it's no one's business. And then he does a second one, and again, nothing, just crumples it like it's made of aluminium. And then he brings down a third blast door, and then all of a sudden that she's stuck behind it. And I was thinking, well, she's just annihilated 2 blast doors. What's so different about this one? There's little bits like that with her character, but the look of the character and the horror tone of the film in certain elements of the film really does work. When it's a horror film, it's great because it gets so creative, it gets weird, it gets not to the point where it's like terrifyingly scary. It's like PG-13 scary, but the imagery and everything of that dark sort of gothic look to Scarlet Witch really works for me in terms of, the visuals and everything and what it does for the character. But it's when they pack in all the other MCU stuff where it just gets completely convoluted and just noisy and loud and abrasive. As soon as this film started off, like it pretty much throws you into this over the top, really overly CGI action set piece where you don't know what's going on and you don't know who these characters are and you don't know what it is they're fighting, and the visuals are just so crazy and all over and just disgusting to look at that it's just kind of an assault on the senses from the first scene. And I don't know. I guess I'm not saying you can't have action in your superhero action film, but I think it's just a way of staging and everything like that. And it's a lot of the action beats in this film feel a far cry away from what Sam Raimi did with, with his Spider-Man films, where it felt very nicely choreographed and it's shot well and it feels very epic in scope. This one just felt like, oh, let's just throw some digital bullshit on let's just oh yeah, my drawer's open. Yeah, it is. Let me just do that so it looks a bit more professional. I keep it real with you guys, I have to get my shirts out of there, I forgot to close it, my bad. So let's see what else we can talk about with this film. So I mentioned the direction and everything like that. Okay, this is absolute spoilers right now. Absolute spoilers, because I'm going to get into some things that I really disliked with this film, or elements of the film that I thought were really lacking. We'll start with a new character that's been introduced. Now, this is more of a problem with the writing and sort of just its way of characterizing and making characters. We're introduced to a new character in this film called American Chavez, and there's loads of lines in the film where Doctor Strange is like, how's America? I don't think he calls her American. I think he calls her America. It's like, how's America? And I don't know anything about the character of American Chavez. This film introduced me to the character. I did a little bit of reading on the character, but not extensively. Never heard of the character. So every time he kept saying, how's America? I thought he meant Captain America. And I was really confused for just a short while until I clocked that her name is American Chavez, which is, it's really out there, isn't it? Now, I haven't done a lot of reading on it, but I think I've read that there's been quite a whole to-do with this character. including the film getting banned in certain countries. I know that Disney usually does pander specifically to the China market, where it will edit its films if there's elements, if there's homosexuality in their films, that cut it on the cutting room floor so that you can still open in China and you can still get a good healthy cut of the box office. I don't know if they've done that with this one. I did read that apparently they weren't editing the film and it was going to get banned in China, which is going to have a devastating effect on its box office for sure. It's like Disney are so phony. They keep pushing these things in their films, like we want more inclusivity, we want more kind of agenda politics put into the film, representation, whatever you want to say. And then also in the same breath, they will edit their films and remove said stuff that they've preached that they want to do so much and want to include in their films so much, just in order to get more money. Disney are just so phony with that stuff. They're so hypocritical. But this time, if they have stuck to their guns and they don't want to edit the film, then fair play to them on this occasion, I guess. But yeah, I don't know much about the character. I think the scene that they're talking about is that we get a very, very, very brief flashback to American Chavez's upbringing, where she has two moms, essentially. Her parents are a same-sex relationship, and there are loads of lines, just kind of hitting it home in case you just didn't, they weren't being subtle about it. There's loads of talk. Oh, my two mums, it's just my parents, just say my parents. It's like my two mums. It's like, I get it. Chill out. I get it. It's fine. But I think that's the thing that a lot of people have had a problem with, or specifically, well, not a lot of people, but specifically, like the China market, maybe. I didn't have a problem with it. As I say, like, I don't know much about the character of American Chavez. It did get to a point where they kept saying that, where I was like, okay, back off with it. Like, I get it. I get it. Like, it's fine. But it felt like they were just like really hitting it home, like you didn't hear it the first time. But like, I don't know much about the character, so I don't know if that is her backstory. If it's a case of they've completely torn apart her backstory from the comic books and changed it so much and just crowbarred that in there, then that is kind of a problem, because that feels more like a box tick. It's like, well, this character doesn't have this backstory, but we're going to force it in there just so we've ticked that representation tick in that box. If that is the case, I don't know. As I say, I don't know anything about the character, so if that is the character's backstory and they've stayed true to the comics with that, then yeah, like, what's the problem? But my problem mostly just comes from the characterization. I don't feel like I know anything about her character. We don't really get much, like, towards the beginning of the film, there's like a little bit of back and forth with Doctor Strange's character, and the actress is fine who plays her, but I just don't feel like I know anything about the character, in all honesty. And I still don't know the answer to this. I don't know if this character has been introduced in a previous TV show, because that's how it felt like right from the off. It feels like the film is just treats it like you've always known this character. You're meant to know who she is. You're meant to know what her powers are and who she is and why she is. She feels like a character that's been introduced in something previously, so you don't need to watch that and then you kind of just thrown into it in the typical MCU way. But that's not the case as far as I know. There's no kind of introduction to this character, and it was kind of weird. I was going to say it's kind of strange, and it would be a terrible pun, wouldn't it? But I don't, even besides that, let's say this is her first appearance, which I believe it is. I don't feel like the writing of the film or the plot of the film focuses on that dynamic between her and Doctor Strange, or even on her to flesh her out as a character. Like, what does, there's no personality there to her, really. There's nothing to really report on her character, which I think was a real missed opportunity. They started off in the way like it's almost going to be this kind of buddy road trip through the multiverse kind of story with Doctor Strange and her, which would have been fine and would have allowed them to grow as characters and everything like that. It's a tried and tested formula that I think could have worked very well. But the second act of this film is where the film just falls on its arse for me, and the pacing just feels so arduous through that middle bit. And they kind of abandon her character. She's locked in a glass cage, and there she remains for a good chunk of the second act. The second act is just a mess, and I'm going to equate this film in particular to Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, in all fairness, Avengers Age of Ultron isn't a film that I've gone back to see. I have only seen it the once when it came out in the cinema, so it could very well be an MCU film that I've kind of come around to a lot more. But I distinctly remember the second act of that film, where they go to Hawkeye's family, where they go to Hawkeye's home. And the film just stops dead in its tracks trying to set up X amount of stuff for all the films that are to come. We've got to set up Thor Ragnarok, and then Thor's going to have this weird spiritual quest and vision, which links into Black Panther and all this. And the film just stops for all this cryptic stuff that is going to set up for future films. And this film does exactly the same. Exactly the same. The whole second act of this film. Where am I going to start off with this thing? Okay, one of my biggest problems, we're introduced to a group of characters called the Illuminati. And when they said that, I did laugh. I was like, the Illuminati? What? Really? But then I realized, there's actually a group of superheroes in the comic books called the Illuminati. Absolute spoilers in this bit, by the way. And we have the lineup, and they're kind, they're variants. They're in a different reality at this point. It's kind of similar to Earth a little bit, but there's like similar people there as well. You've got Rachel McAdams' character who's there again. You've got Chiwetel Ejiofor's character. I'm going to get onto him in a minute because that is probably one of the biggest missed opportunities for me in this entire film. And his absence is really noticeable in this film. And yeah, it's the Illuminati. So you've got Peggy Carter, who is the new Captain America, or, Captain Carter, played by Hayley Atwell. Let's see who else you've got. You've got Lashana Lynch, who is Captain Marvel. You've got Black Bolt, who was from the Inhumans TV series, which was cancelled after one season. So I guess that's canon now. It's nice to know that he came back. John Krasinski as Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four in full outfit. And the big one, which was kind of announced in the trailer anyway, is Patrick Stewart return. Sir Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier, Professor X. And, he's a lot more comic accurate. He's in the yellow hover chair. The bit that made me smile the most was in the soundtrack when he wheels out, and it was pure 90s X-Men nostalgia. There's a nice little reprise of the 90s animated theme, like when he wheels out, it's like and I thought, that's cool. And if we do get a future X-Men film in the MCU, if they actually use that as the main theme, I'm gonna be so happy, because it's such it's an absolutely cracking theme song. One of the best 90s cartoons, 90s kid shows themes ever, in my opinion. So they're all introduced, and they're kind of putting along with Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, they're all putting Doctor Strange on trial, because the Doctor Strange from their reality, in the attempt to kill Thanos, destroyed the Earth, basically destroyed everything. Everyone died, apart from the Illuminati. I don't know if it was just like a huge mass of people, or if like actually all people were killed. Well, I'm guessing not all people were killed. A lot of people were killed due to Doctor Strange's negligence. And as such, they kill him, I believe, or banish him, because we get introduced to another Doctor Strange later on, and I can't remember if he's the one that was banished, or if this was or if they killed that Doctor Strange and there's a completely different one. I believe they killed him. And then they kind of like erected a statue in his memory, because to the people, they're going to pretend that Doctor Strange was a hero and not a villain. But, well, not a villain, but they want to pretend that Doctor Strange is a hero rather than a failure. But if there's no people left and there was a mass like death due to Doctor Strange failing, then wouldn't the people know that he's not a hero? So I was a little bit confused on that part. Then, they're all putting him on trial, and they're all trying to decide if the Doctor Strange that we know is actually good and will actually help them, or if he's just like a villain as well and is going to doom them to come and like end their way of life, essentially. And at this moment, you've got Scarlet Witch, who's pursuing American Chavez's character, and she's almost like the T-1000 in this. She's like a Terminator. She will not be stopped until she gets what she wants, and she wants to try and take American Chavez so that she can open the portal to another multiverse where Wanda can be with her children from WandaVision. That's essentially all she wants in this film. She just wants to be a mother. She says, if a reality out there exists where I'm happy, wouldn't you want to live in it? She's tired of waking up, lonely every morning with no Vision there and without her children. And she wants to possess or eliminate entirely the Wanda from the universe where she has children so that she can be that surrogate mother to what she sees as her children. And she's breaking into this, and the Illuminati say, right, we're all going to fight her. And, we queue up for this big fight, and it's like, we've introduced like major characters in this, Charles Xavier's back from all the X-Men films, poor Patrick Stewart, dragged kicking and screaming by Marvel to do another goddamn performance as Charles Xavier. He thought maybe he was signing the character off when he died in Logan, but no, he's back again. And Reed Richards, we're getting a Fantastic Four film coming out. That's massive. And this is where I say that Scarlet Witch is really overpowered in that she just destroys these characters from the off. She just instantly kills them. And if you were going to kill off the characters, that's fair enough, but I would have had a longer fight scene because this is over quick. Maybe you could argue this. I don't know. It kind of feels like, female power again in this part where we kill off all the guy superheroes instantly sort of thing. That's what it felt like to me. And it was like, then we have our slanging match with all the women. So Reed Richards goes in first. Bearing in mind, you're setting this character up who's going to be one of your main protagonists of the Fantastic Four. You need to showcase his strength. You need to get people on board that this is a new take of Fantastic Four they want to see. They want to see these strong characters. And Reed Richards just gets stripped into Play-Doh. It gets quite brutal, actually. He's just kind of torn apart instantly. The dude doesn't even land a punch. And we don't really get a showcase of his, stretching ability all that much. It's just over so quick, and he's dead. Then, you have, what's his name? Black Bolt. I haven't seen the Inhuman, so I don't know anything about the character. Black Bolt shows up and is instantly killed and doesn't do anything. And they completely rip off the Matrix in this scene as well. They do the whole thing. Tell me, Mr. Anderson, what good is a phone call if you're unable to speak? And then the skin grows over his mouth. They do that exactly the same thing. Because his power, I think, is to shout, isn't it? He shouts like a beam out. And Wanda's like, oh yeah, well, what can you do if you can't talk? And closes his mouth. And then he kind of basically shoots himself with his own shouting ability. He's dead. And then you have Professor Charles Xavier, immensely powerful telepath, one of the most powerful characters in the entire MCU. And Wanda can beat Charles Xavier at mind games and snaps his neck, just instantly kills him. I was just like, oh, come on. Then you have Hayley Atwell as Peggy Carter. And she has more of a fight with Wanda and then gets cut in half by her own shield. Then you have Lashana Lynch, who's playing Captain Marvel. And she just kind of gets absolutely annihilated and crushed. And I don't know, you've just set all these people up and that's your take on the Illuminati and they're just all taken out instantly. I think it was more of a problem I had with, kind of with Peggy Carter as well. I was like, this is a cool take on the character. I mean, I don't know how much mileage they want to get out of Captain Carter, but if it was a one-off, I fear she had enough to do. But Charles Xavier and Reed Richards, they're massive characters that are potentially going to be used in future incarnations, the X-Men and, of course, Fantastic Four. And your first introduction to them are just them getting instantly wasted by Scarlet Witch, and they don't really have much to do. And that was the part of the film that just felt really convoluted for me. That felt like studio notes, right, we want to set up the X-Men, we want to set up the Fantastic Four, we want to set up Lashana Lynch as Captain Marvel, potentially, if things don't go well with Brie Larson, which it looks like they're not going well with Brie Larson. She's not exactly popular among the cast, is she? If they want to kind of push her out, oh look, we have Lashana Lynch who can fill that role of Captain Marvel for us now. The film just stopped. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, let's talk about his character, which I've actually got to bring his character name up because I've forgotten his name. Mordo. Now, I seem to remember in the post-credit scene of the first Doctor Strange film, they were setting him up because, I mean, he turned bad, didn't he, in the post-credit scene of the film. So I was fully expecting him to be one of the main villain, or to be the main villain of this film, especially when we see him in the trailer. And he's not. He's kind of this alternate universe's character of Mordo. And he's a lot more pleasant. There's still like some gray areas with the character, like he can't trust Doctor Strange. He might have grown up being very jealous of the character. And they have a bit of a fight, but it's not in any way, shape, or form the same dynamic as the whole antagonist-protagonist dynamic that they had towards the end of the first film, and what I thought they were going to set up for this one. Because this is a multiverse version of that character, we still don't know where the normal reality version of his character is. There's no continuity, there's no continuation with his character there, and I thought that was a massive missed opportunity, because Chiwetel Ejiofor is a fantastic actor, and I feel like Mordo didn't really get much to do in the first film, and this a sequel was the chance to do it, which could have worked if you'd have had Mordo as the main villain of this film. But you don't. You get Scarlet Witch. And speaking of which, I love, I love Elizabeth Olsen's performance as Scarlet Witch. I think it's definitely the sort of the swan song of this film. But they set her up as the villain way too quickly. There's no build up to her being a villain in this. At the end of WandaVision, it felt like she'd reached a place of resolution, that she could control both sides of her personality. But from the very first scene where Doctor Strange goes to see her in this film, she's instantly set up as the antagonist and the main threat for this film. There's no lead up to it or anything like that. She just kind of is evil from the beginning. And again, kind of where we see her being overpowered. I know they need to set her up as a strong character, and there is a way to do that. And, the outcomes in the film, her beating the Illuminati, I do have a problem with the way that she dispatched Charles Xavier, for example. But if you want to have her kill off all the other characters, do it. Just have them put up more of a fight. Have it be more of a struggle for her to showcase the powers of these other characters. And another point in the film where I felt like they didn't do that, where they kind of made everyone else look really weak compared to her when they shouldn't be weak characters, is where Scarlet Witch attacks Comatage. Like the temple where all of the sorcerers are. Of course, you've got Wong, played by Benedict Wong. Convenient, isn't it? They've got the same surname. He's obviously the Sorcerer Supreme, and they know that Scarlet Witch is about to attack Comatage, and they need to fortify the place. They get everyone out there, every sorcerer that they have at Comatage. They're all doing this with, like their rings or whatever they have, their powers. They're prepared for her. And what does the entire united force of all of these sorcerers that can do anything, can create portals to other worlds, can use all manner of magic, that they're basically like Green Lantern, like they use the power of imagination, they can do pretty much anything. Their way of defending against Scarlet Witch is to all create like a plasma shield around Comatage, and their plan is to just hold that shield, which is a terrible plan. Like, how long you've got to stand there? Like, she's determined. She's going to keep attacking the shield. She's not going to lose her power. What are you going to do? How are you going to maintain the shield? It's basically the shield from when in the last Harry Potter film, where they all use their spells and create a shield around Hogwarts. It's basically that scene. And, she pretty much breaks through it instantly. They're all really struggling to repel her. Every single sorcerer, by the way, combined. And then she's able to penetrate the shield with her mind powers and kind of gets into the head of one of the sorcerers and tells him to run away, which creates a hole in the shield, which allows her to break through it. And she just levels the temple instantly. And I was just thinking, wow, these are really terrible sorcerers, that you just killed them all off instantly. sets her up as a villain, I guess, as a powerful villain, but at what cost? I wanted to see more of a struggle. I wanted to see them put up more of a fight, that they are actually capable characters and are actually strong characters. But God, I can't talk. Speaking of strong characters, there's a moment with Wong in this film, and I'm just kind of tired of this. Like, there's never a moment where you feel like anyone's actually in peril, because they can all survive these ridiculous things. Now, I know it's a superhero film, and of course there are some stretches of the imagination, right, where of certain things that people can survive. But fundamentally, I mean, you've got the character of Wong, who is a human character. He has all of these magical powers and everything, but he's flesh and blood. If you throw him off a cliff and he hits the rocks on the way down, he will die. He will break every bone in his body and he will be a dead man. Scarlet Witch just yeets him off a snowy peak, and he falls, and he's got this kind of like spiked whip chain thing that he can like use as a weapon, but also use it to like stick into walls and climb with. As he's falling off, he tries to use this as like a grappling hook, and it misses, and he just falls. He is dead. Because when we like find him later on in the film, he's laid on like a whole bunch of rocks on the mountainside. And he just gets up and he's absolutely fine, and he just kind of dusts himself off and cracks a joke in typical MCU fashion, and there's just no repercussions. He's not immortal. He's flesh and blood. He can be killed. The Sorcerer Supreme in the first film, Tilda Swinton, could be killed. So, I don't know. It's just, you watch these action scenes of these big bombastic CGI action scenes, and it's just that there's no tension, there's no awe, there's nothing to get invested in, because you know that everyone's just going to make it out and it's going to be absolutely fine. Massive spoiler alert, at the end of the film, we're led to believe that Scarlet Witch has killed herself. Well, we didn't see her die, so they're not going to get rid of Elizabeth Olsen. Maybe they'll use this as a way to take out her character for a few films, but I'm sure she'll be back. I don't know, guys. I really wanted to like this film, and I was interested in it, but this film is a fucking mess. The biggest problems with this film is the story and the writing. The positives are Olsen's performance and the direction. Because, it is strong. Like, okay, now I can go into spoilers. Let's talk about more of the Sam Raimi-isms. Bruce Campbell's cameo in this film filled me with so much goddamn joy. I was actually lucky enough to meet him. I got my photo with him when I went to Telford Comic-Con a few weeks ago. And at least his public persona, believe me, everything you expect he will be based on what you've seen him playing Ash and, all of those Raimi films. He is that he lives up to that persona in real life, and he's so good with his fans. He's so animated and wacky and everything you want him to be. And he plays up to that fantastically. There's a scene where he's like punching himself and, grabbing his head and like smacking it against things. And it's Evil Dead. It's Evil Dead 2. It's Army of Darkness. It's where his hand becomes possessed and he's doing all this crazy stuff. And he's so great with all of that. He actually gets the post-credit scene as well, which for anyone going to see this film knowing that it's a Raimi film and can pick out all of these parts, it's great. There's probably a lot of people in the audience that doesn't even know who Sam Raimi is, unless you said, they directed the Spider-Man films, probably hasn't seen any of the Evil Dead films. Very tragically, probably doesn't even know who Bruce Campbell is. So they were probably going like, what? This is just random. Who is this guy? But, I got a kick out of all these scenes. As I mentioned, there's the book that summons all of these demons and all of this dark magic, which is basically the Necronomicon, and all the stuff with Wanda as well. There's moments where she's kind of haunting Doctor Strange in a way, and she's trying to break him. And they do some really creative stuff where she's like coming through reflections, like puddles of water on the floor, like hands are coming out and everything, or from mirrors, like a hand's trying to grab around. And it almost looks like it's filmed in a different shutter speed where, she's got all these kind of like twitchy kind of movements in the way that she moves, which is great. She climbs out the mirror and she kind of comes out like the Ring, and she's like bent over backwards like a spider walk, and she kind of clicks and rotates herself around. Loved all of that stuff, and I wanted more of that, and I know that Sam Raimi can do more than that as well. As I mentioned, the Dutch angles with all of this stuff and the crazy zooms, it's great stuff. Great stuff. And that was the best stuff in the film, was all the horror elements. Doesn't get too scary, as I mentioned, but it's fine for what it is. It reminded, there's bits as well that remind me of Drag Me to Hell, and just the crazy over the top quality of it. I'm trying to think of some other horror elements as well. Oh, and towards the, okay, so there's a variant of Doctor Strange, who is killed, and when American Chavez comes to our reality, Doctor Strange says, "Well, what proof do you have that you come from another reality and that you spoke to other versions of me?" And she's brought the dead body back of Doctor Strange. That was really weird. Like, why would she do that? How did she know that she was going to come face to face with another Doctor Strange? That she would just happen to meet him? She just brought this dead body back. That's really fucked up. So that was a really strange device. But of course, it has to be set up for later, where in order for Doctor Strange to spirit walk and to dream walk into a different body, he needs another Doctor Strange in his current reality, and that is the dead body that was brought there. So Doctor Strange comes back as like this, necromancer kind of character, where he's the dead body and he's acting through him, and it's like the villain from Army of Darkness. It's like Liam Neeson's character in Darkman. Is this skeleton with like all this like missing skin on his cheek with all of his teeth, and he's like yeah, and he's like this crazy twitchy dead body character again. There's bits where these dark entities, these dark spirits show up, and they're kind of squeaky voice and like na kind of voices to them, and they're like the three small little clones of Ash from Army of Darkness. So there's loads of bits like that in the film, and those were all of my favorite bits. I'm trying to think what else I can say about this film in all honesty. It just doesn't feel very focused of a story. And it felt like with a film that's called In the Multiverse of Madness, it felt like it had so much potential that it could have really blown the lid off the whole multiverse thing. It could have showed us way more interesting, crazy realities. You could have got so creative with this. You could have got so psychedelic with it. And you could have developed number one, the introduction of American Chavez for a start, because that caught me way off guard. That felt like I'd missed out, because I still haven't watched Hawkeye and I still haven't watched Moon Knight just yet. And to the point where I was thinking, shit, was she introduced in like one of those shows that I haven't seen yet? Because it feels like you're missing out on that whole history of the character. And then, that storyline's dropped, and we're not setting up that dynamic between the two. And then the whole middle section of the film is just setting up all these future characters that we're going to get glimpses of in future content. And it just stops. And then you get to your ending. Doctor Strange feels like he's playing second fiddle in the whole film. He doesn't feel like he's the main focus. He doesn't feel like he's the main character. Very much in this film, I would say that Scarlet Witch is the main character. She's the main antagonist of the film, and she's the only one that had any kind of believable emotional arc to a character. And I think Elizabeth Olsen played it fantastically well. Scarlet Witch very much now is one of my favorite characters in the entire MCU. She's easily one of the most powerful, but to a bit of a ridiculous degree in this, in which characters that I felt like should have put up more of a fight feel very nerfed and very weakened, because we've got to get the plot, because Scarlet Witch is meant to beat them in order for this to happen. It just doesn't feel very focused of a story. The writing isn't that great either. There are lines that are just downright embarrassing. There's lines like, I can't remember the line exactly. It's something like, in order for me to kill you, I'm going to have to kill you again. There's a line similar to that, which is terrible. I guess we can start talking about the post-credit scenes as well then. So as I mentioned, Bruce Campbell gets the post-credit scene. The mid-credit scene, spoiler alert, is a character played by Charlize Theron, who I actually didn't know who her character was at all. And I'm just actually going to look now to see if I can find it. The character's called Clea, or Dr. Clea Strange. I did a little bit of reading on the character. She's apparently also a sorceress, is the disciple, lover, and eventual wife of Doctor Strange. There's also, and this is what's kind of got me now, Charlize Theron I have no complaints at all. Charlize Theron is an incredible woman. It's just oof. And she plays that, she plays a heroine very well, whether it be, like, for example, Mad Max Fury Road as Furiosa. She can play that strong female character very well. But she can also play the villain very well and have that very cold, calculating quality to her. Maybe not a good example, but the Fast and Furious films, I love her character there. She can really play up to that role. So we're introducing this character now. In the comic books, I think she's the niece of Dormammu, and in the Dark Realm or whatever it's called, which it looks like in the portal that she opens in the post-credit scene is exactly where they're going back to. So I don't know if she has control of the Dark Realm now that Dormammu's kind of been imprisoned in a time loop. But there's also a storyline which I'm kind of worried about, called The Death of Doctor Strange, I believe it's called, where I'm thinking if they do a Death of Doctor Strange, like Benedict Cumberbatch wanting to play this character forevermore. He's played the character a lot. He's done all the Avengers films. He's done 2 Doctor Strange films. He's done a Spider-Man film. How many more films does he have on his contract? And does he want to keep playing this character forevermore? Are they going to kill Doctor Strange off in the next installment and basically replace the character with female version, with Charlize Theron? They're kind of doing the same with Thor by the looks of it. And I know that Lady Thor's a character in the comic books before people start complaining, but we might be getting rid of Chris Hemsworth and replacing character with female Thor. In this, you've got I know they're not going to do this with Captain America because, we've got Falcon, who is now become the new Captain America. But Hayley Atwell in this, you've got Captain Carter, Captain Marvel, and all these other characters. I'm thinking, like, Jesus Christ, like, you're just going to have an entire female roster of Avengers? Like, that's what it feels like at the moment. I hope that's not the case. But it did get me wondering. Maybe they're not going to do the death of Doctor Strange, and maybe they are going to keep them together forever. But I didn't know who the character was when she showed up. I had no idea who she was, and then obviously I read through Wikipedia afterwards, and I realized who it actually was, and then did a little bit of reading on the character. So that's clearly where we're heading into the next film. And hopefully Chiwetel Ejiofor comes back and they do like actually something with his in reality character, because he's still a villain who's vying for revenge against Doctor Strange. And we haven't followed up on that storyline just yet. So there's also other bits as well. Shang-Chi at the end of the film, you have those 2 characters that are taken to the inner sanctum. And we haven't seen them in Spider-Man, and we haven't seen them in this film. Are they still part of it? I don't know. So there are some story threads that don't feel like they link on from some of the other ones. So yeah, this was just it's not a good film. I think I'm settling on the fact that it's not a good film. It just feels very unfocused. It's very loud. It's very obnoxious. It doesn't really do anything for the Doctor Strange character. It feels like he's kind of playing second fiddle. They try to attempt this buddy road movie with American Chavez, but they just kind of don't follow up on that. And I don't feel like I know much about her character at all to really say anything about her. She's just kind of a nothing character. She's just there. She, in many ways, she is kind of the MacGuffin of the film and nothing more. There's no character to her in any way. Elizabeth Olsen is fantastic as Scarlet Witch, although I think that there's no lead up to her being the villain. She just kind of is from the beginning. I do think in some respects she is a little bit overpowered to the nerfing and the detriment of other characters who we know before that point are incredibly powerful characters. And then the whole second act of the film is just a slog. It really, the story just stops in order to set up all these other characters and other things that we're going to be, we won't have to concern ourselves with until like 10 films time. So it's a bit of a letdown. It's not as good as the first Doctor Strange film. I think this one has more of a clear directorial style, and that's just Sam Raimi, and I'm glad that he did manage to get that through in his filmmaking. I think it's probably, alongside James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy films, it's the most obvious director's style shown in the film, where it's like they have let the director do what they want for certain scenes. And it's always great to see Raimi do horror, because he's really, there's a scene in this where two of the Doctor Strangers are fighting with each other, and they sort of lift the written music notation off sheets of music and like fire it at someone, and then he takes those notes and reworks it into like this uber chord, and then throws the chord back at him. And if anyone's, of course, I'm going to link it to Tolkien. If anyone's read the Silmarillion, if they were ever going to visually show what the battle of the musical themes between Eru Ilúvatar and Morgoth is, that was great. There is a line from the trailer, actually, from that kind of villainous Doctor Strange that isn't in the film. It's probably my favorite line in the trailer too. It's where he's just like, things just got out of hand. It's not in the film. It's probably the best trailer line. It's not in the film. So I don't know why that was cut. I'm interested to see if there's any other footage that was cut from the film. And yeah, we kind of just end the film where Doctor Strange has got a third eye. And that kind of confused me as well a little bit, because you have sort of normal Doctor Strange, and then you have villainous Doctor Strange who has a third eye. But then at the end of the film, we kind of think we're back to normal. We're back to equilibrium. Doctor Strange is getting ready. He's walking down the street. It's bright. It's sunshiny. And then all of a sudden, he just freaks out in the middle of the crosswalk and just starts screaming. And then this third eye props up on his forehead. And I was thinking, oh my God, has like the villainous Doctor Strange entered Earth? Like our Earth? Like, is this what's happened to the original Doctor Strange? Is he trapped? And this is the sort of bizarro. This is the villainous Doctor Strange who's now in our normal world. But then you get the post-credit scene, and as far as I know, I think it's normal Doctor Strange has just randomly developed a third eye. I don't know. So yeah, I really wanted to like this film. I did, but it didn't do it for me. And in all honesty, I'm really, really feeling the fatigue of the MCU right now. I still haven't seen the trailer for the new Thor movie, Thor Love and Thunder. I really couldn't give less of a shit about it. And of course, I'll have to go and see it. Of course I will. And I'll do a review for you guys when it comes out. But I just don't care. I just don't care anymore. It feels like they hit Endgame. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed WandaVision. I thought that was pretty good. But it just feels so tired now. It feels like we're not setting anything up. It feels like we're just kind of making it up as we go along. With the other one, there was like, I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative. And then at the end of the Avengers film, we see Thanos. And if you're a comic book fan, oh my God, we're going to do the Infinity Gauntlet and everything, the Infinity Wars. But then with this one, we've kind of stopped doing origin films. We've stopped doing origin films, and we're just making MCU films. We're doing every film that comes out ties in just to the nth degree with all of the other films. And I think that's a problem. And I think that's going to compound on itself in that I think you are losing a lot of emotional resonance with these characters. What made Iron Man, what made Captain America so great with audiences, especially when you get to their emotional payoffs in Endgame, is that they had solid origin stories and we'd stuck with them for so long. We haven't really had a proper origin story for any of the characters in Phase 4 yet. We're just kind of just introduced to them. And I don't know what the future of the MCU is. It's going to be interesting to see how well this film does. If it is banned in China, then obviously that's going to have a huge financial impact on the box office. But I think it will do well. Obviously, it will top the box office. My screening was packed, and I went in the morning, which has been unheard of. Probably not since like Infinity War and Endgame. But yeah, morning screening absolutely packed. So they're still bringing in an audience. We're still going to get a lot more of them. But my investment has sort of like well and truly gone. In my opinion, you get more middle of the road or forgettable MCU or downright bad ones than you do good ones. So that's kind of where I'm at with superhero films in general a little bit at the moment. I'm just really feeling that fatigue, which is probably also why I still haven't watched Hawkeye and I haven't watched Moon Knight. It's just content to me now at this point. It's like, it's pure obligation. It really is. It's just me going, I know that this character and this event in this show now is probably going to link into this film. And if I do want to stay up to date with them, then I have to watch it. I feel like I'm almost pressured. I'm almost forced into watching it because, imagine if I didn't watch WandaVision, I'd be completely confused by this film. I'd be like, how is she in the costume? Who are these children that she has? What was Westview or whatever it was called? All these things. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I did get the new Avatar trailer, though. I will say that. Avatar, the Way of Water. Avatar Book 2 Water, whatever you want to call it. It looks very pretty. The first film looked very pretty and had a terrible story. Just a really uninteresting, unimaginative story and a terrible script with forgettable characters. Can you tell me anything about Jake Sully or Neytiri? I can't. It's just, but it looks visually stunning, but, name me a film that doesn't now. CGI is great, but CGI just doesn't make a good movie for me, no matter how good it looks or, how amazing your visual effects department is and, the solid hours that the visual effects team have had to work in to make that film look good. We've had a 10-year wait and over a 10-year wait from Avatar 1 to Avatar 2. And to me, it's just not a film that people really talk about anymore. There was the whole 3D craze when it came out, wasn't there? And then this one's going to be 60 frames a second, and I just don't care. The trailer didn't really show anything about characters or story. It's just showing James Cameron's raging hard on for water. All of his films pretty much have something to do with water, near enough, with a few exceptions. Even his first film, Piranha 2, water. Titanic, The Abyss. Did Aliens have water in it as well? You've got Liquid Metal with the T-1000. Dude loves water. He loves his water. So, I think that trailer's going up, I think, at the end of this week, but they were attaching it to, Doctor Strange trailer, Doctor Strange film. I'm not interested in Avatar 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. But it's going to be the big Christmas box office, isn't it? And it'll be interesting to see if it does draw a crowd. I think it will. I think it will do very well. Avatar has its fans. Of course, it's the highest grossing film ever made for some inexplicable reason, for a film that no one talks about. Yeah, I think it'll have the staying power, and especially with Disney behind it now as well, it's going to do well. Anyway, I've talked long enough. I think that's everything I can probably say on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So, sort of rounding off, let me know what you think of the film. Did you really enjoy it? Did you think it was kind of middle of the road? How would you compare it to other MCU films? And, speculation for what's to come in the MCU. Do let me know. It'll be interesting to hear your guys' opinions. Do you think I'm being too harsh on it? I think I'm being very fair. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, discussions, and live streams. I love talking films with you guys, and I want to build this community. I want to get more people coming in, more people commenting throughout, and just sharing that passion, sharing that love of film. And of course, you can share in the love by following me on Twitter at Hobbit Fan Editor. That's at Hobbit Fan Editor, where I post all of the times and days that I'm going to be going live and all the videos that I want to do, as well as some other little bits that might be on my mind, just sort of day to day. So definitely give that a watch. At the moment, I'm going through weekly all of the James Bond films. To celebrate 60 years of Bond, my local cinema, and I think a lot of cinemas in the UK, are playing all of the James Bond films, one a week, all the way through to the month of October, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'll next be live on Tuesday, the 10th of May next week, at the slightly later time of 11:30 p.m. British Standard Time, where I'm going to be reviewing the 1965 film Thunderball, the fourth James Bond film, fourth Sean Connery film. So it's not one of my favorite Bond films, but what I love most about these things is that seeing them on the big screen, I get to reevaluate these films. There might be aspects to them that I appreciate more, aspects that I hadn't noticed before. So I'm interested to check out Thunderball again. So tune in 11:30 on Tuesday. But for right now, that'll do it for me. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in, watched along, and commented. And I hope to hear more of your comments after this video is said and done. So until the next video, I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.